Hello and welcome to a very special part of South Africa. This is the Kruger National Park. My name is Mark. Andrew is on camera. We have Tara in Final Control, our office that helps us broadcast to you wherever you are in the world. This is Djuma Game Reserve. This is dawn at Djuma Game Reserve with the wonderful sounds of the day waking up. We had, I think to start, a go-away bird that was the first to say hello this morning. There is an interesting deep woo-woo of ground hornbills. I don't know if we're going to get to see them. I hope we're going to get to see them because they're very, very special. I heard some waterfowl down at the dam. We are in, or at, the very northeasternmost corner of Djuma. So we have the entire Djuma Game Reserve and WildEarth Safari area to cover if we can get that far during the morning. But I hope you're going to join us, and I hope you're going to spend the next 3 hours with us as we drive this vehicle around this beautiful part of the game reserve and see what animals we can find for you. Hope you enjoyed that sunrise as much as we did. It was a meditative moment of note. We've got a perfect temperature right now, and quite beautifully the sky is clearing nicely as we can see this with this sunrise. Little bits of cloud. We had a shower during the night, came in at about just before 2 this morning. It drizzled throughout most of the night. Thought it would be rather chilly this morning, but it's actually turned into a really nice morning. For you, Andrew, so you can get a better look at the beautiful vista of a rather big dam just above our northeast property known as Buffelshoek.
Hello everyone. Being out in the bush and being out there live has its technical challenges. We're experiencing some of that now and are working on it as far.
Apologies for that break in signal there, but there's a little bit of a signal issue perhaps because of the dampness, but I was talking about this beautiful liquid call, and here are the culprits. Mostly only during rains that we hear the magpie strikes in their morning song. Be interested to know if any of you have, I know some people, some of our viewers have parrots. It'd be interesting to know how your birds react to these noises. I know I've seen a few viewers whose cats react to some of the video that we broadcast. It's nice to know how other creatures are enthralled or entertained. Pretty sound. The magpie shot. Now, only a few days ago, everything was starting to turn brown and yellow. In fact, it was predominantly a very beige and yellow background while we were driving. And it has become noticeably greener from this wonderful rain we had a few days ago. The odd shower that we've been getting since then is just helping to keep things moist, and there's a little spurt of growth, everything. Have been alarming just yet, maybe because it hasn't flown yet. It's a very special eagle. I'm expecting its mate to be around somewhere. Looks like it's going to be flying very, very soon. Unfortunately, just turned around, was facing us. Oh, I might be wrong. We might have to get a better look at him. I think we're going to have to try and get closer to this child. Try to go around onto the fire break. See if we can get a little closer. With this morning light, it would be really nice to see. First I thought it was the African hawk, one of the African hawk eagles. I look, the more it's looking like something else. How about some suggestions from birders or non-birders, or anybody wants to try their hand at eagle identification? One thing I couldn't see was whether it had feathered legs. I actually didn't even look at the monitor until we zoomed out, because I was watching it through binoculars. If it had flown, we would have been able to see with the wings, underwings, even the back of the eagle. But they're very pale in front. Road shortcut. drive a boundary sometimes. As you can see, it's quite a wide road we're turning off from our northern boundary, and it does offer us an opportunity to see which animals might have crossed in or out of the Djuma area. Animals have a freedom that we don't have. We're a little bit restricted in our movements here. We stay on Djuma and we can go over to Arakusa, but the animals, of course, they've got millions of acres to move in. The whole greater Kruger National Park, we're in a smaller part of that known as the Sabi Sand Game Reserve, and even within that is this Djuma private game reserve. Like a suburb of a town in a city in New Jersey. That's kind of the analogy. Or a kibbutz in Israel, but this is Djuma. Into another one. A county. A farm in a county in the UK. Maybe we're bigger than that. Bigger, smaller. Okay, let's see if we can find him again and creep up on this bird. See it straight up in that dead body. Bongo. Giving a shake. I think he's going to die. I don't want to get too close. Oh. Now, the interesting thing comes in. Did you hear that noise as it flew? Every bird in the area freak out. A lot of alarm calls, a lot of screeching. And it's flown further. Now, it's going to be very important to identify this bird. This is not, I don't think this is an African hawk eagle, which is what I first thought it was. But it definitely is an all-white underparts. It's feathered legs all the way down. And it's got the white windows in the wings. And I've got an idea in my head, but I would like to have confirmation. I mean, like an Ayers hawk eagle, because it doesn't have the spotty underparts. So we're going to have to try and sneak up on it again, because if it is, it would be a very, very important eagle to spot and to see, as well as to have record of here in this part of the Sabi Sand. Looks like I'm going to maybe fly, no? Please stay there, bird. Please, just want to look at you once more. Seems to be getting a bit loud. If you move out, then off he goes. Bad signal. Flew in. Well, it flew off again, and I got another good look at the underparts, both under wings and its belly, chest, and it is all white. It doesn't have the barring of the African hawk eagle, and I just have to get the book and show you what why I think it is what I think it is. And it seems to be solitary because as it's moving, I'm only hearing the birds around it reacting. If it had a mate around, well, maybe the mate is around, but not moving. If the mate was around, we might have heard birds shouting alarms elsewhere. Yes, dog, I saw. On the camera, we turn the two wires around. Seems to have flown away further deeper into Buffalo's Hook, so I can't see where it's gone. We have to have a debate. I should have taken a photograph. Jane in Baltimore sent in a message to say the African grey parrot name is Catherine Hepburn. Hello, Catherine. Nice to meet an African in Baltimore. Is it Baltimore? Sorry if I fiddle with it a lot, but it keeps falling out. African grey is mimicking a lot of the bird call, especially the go-away bird here, grey lurry. I heard ground hornbills up the way, but I think they too are in Buffalo's Hook. Now I need to find my record to show you. Open up the duck. Snake eagles, true eagles. Stop and have a look. The African hawk eagle's got a very dark head. I suppose the juvenile is a completely different colour. It's brown, so it wasn't even if it was a juvenile. But it's also got a very, very spotty breast. The long-chested Benelli's. Oops, I just dropped a parrot feather. No, green feather. Ayers hawk eagle. It's not Ayers. Yeah, Ayers is also very heavily streaked at the bottom. Ayers doesn't have windows in the wings. So it wasn't an Ayers. Maybe it was an African hawk eagle that just wasn't very spotty. There's no other eagle that's so pale underneath other than that pale Wahlbergs that we had. And well, he's gone back to other parts of Africa. That was too small to be a juvenile martial eagle. They don't have windows in their wings. Maybe African walk eagle, but it's going to just have to remain one of those mysteries perhaps, and we can maybe get a consensus from some of the viewers that might have had a look at it. What was it? Sometimes that first impression is the right impression. When I first saw it from a distance, it looked very much like an African walk eagle, the right posture, but it was just too pale underneath. Onward ho! What should we do and where should we go? I think down south. Where animals come to drink. Must read what movement of animals there were, what is where we can find things, because having done a fair little bit of this northwestern corner, I can see that there was one big elephant bull that headed west, barely even touched Juno. He went to an area along the northwestern boundary of the Sabi. Other than that, I can see that there was hippo that walked to that big dam we just been watching. migrant species. Jerry, morning Jerry. From Maryland. I've been as far as Russia. We do. Of course, those are all what we call the Palearctic migrants. Then we have the inter-African migrants that come from other parts of Africa, fly south. Birds that migrate, but since we don't see them, they don't count. So at the moment, most of those seasonal birds, or what we call migrants, have left for warmer climates. As it starts getting cooler and the sun starts heading into the northern hemisphere, I think we'd be hard pressed to find any migrants still here. That's why I thought that can't really be the pale warbird, but it wasn't, because it was too pale under the wing. Warbirds wouldn't be pale under the wings like that. We can expect some of them to come back around September. Anyway, they start coming back in late August, early September, but some of them only come back as late as November, late November. You see, some of the migrants that come along. Oh, hello, giraffe. Gosh, big old Mrs. Giraffe standing here in the lip. Morning, madam. It's a little bit damp, but you're also very dark for a lady giraffe. There, and suddenly the tallest mammal in Africa just disappears behind some bushes. Tallest mammal ever. I wonder, I don't think there's any way we can get a better look at her. I'll go back through the back of the strip. We don't have any little roads leading off. This is Gallagher shortcut, and the only road further up is going to be too far away, and the one behind us is too far away. She's there, but there's an old track. I remember following leopard on this old track. See if we can get a better look at it. I have to get back to talking about birds in a bit. Morning, madam. Still a little bit far around here, Andrew. Okay. That's the best view we get. Okay, I see that. A lot of the cameraman. Are those not reversed again?
I'll switch in now.
seems we're having some audio problems this morning. Hope that gets sorted out. Hope maybe this makes a difference. Morning, Anne. Anne in California is saying she believes that giraffe have a very particular scent about them. Does it have any particular function? It could do, Anne. I think every animal has its own scent. Every animal has its, I guess you could call, body odor. Most probably just like elephants when they're in must. I suppose giraffe bulls, when their testosterone levels are up, when it's mating time, I guess they too can have a very musty smell about them. And yes, it probably plays a very big role in sexual selection, in terms of females maybe going for the stronger scented ones because it tells them that they are stronger. That gives them some signal that that particular male is more virile. But I'm sure that is to be said for almost all animals when it's mating time. That's what pheromones are all about. I want to see this, follow this little old track just beyond this little marula tree in front of us, and there might be a gap to see her a little bit better. It's unusually dark for a female giraffe. You can hear the rat-a-tat-tat of a woodpecker in the background, and that's a territorial tap. That's not the tap that you hear when they're digging for grubs in wood. So she's decided we're okay. She's going to go back to feeding, which is a nice sign that she's not concerned with us.
Long eyelash as well.
Yes.
So pretty.
And she's got the mascara on laid thick this morning. Morning, Ben. Ben's from Texas. Middle of the night in Texas. Ben was asking, what does a giraffe do to protect itself from the thorns while it's feeding? And I mentioned that she's darker than normal. I don't really mean she's darker than normal. I just meant she's unusually dark for a female. Ben was also asking what is the difference between the colors of the sexes. Generally speaking, Ben, the bulls tend to be darker than the cows. That doesn't mean that you can't get darker females, and she's a perfect example of a relatively dark female. Also, females tend to lighten with age as bulls tend to darken with age, but it's not a hard and fast rule, and a lot of it has got to do with genetics. And very much like some of us have dark hair and some of us have lighter hair, giraffe have a variety of different shades of color, from this deep chocolate-ish to tan color. I hope we get to see more giraffe and get an idea of some of the different shades of color. Excuse me, that you can see them in. As for the thorns, well, you find that the trees that have thorns are the trees that have been browsed on for millennia. They're the trees that have the best tasting leaves, and one of the reasons why there are thorns is because they've been browsed so heavily over millions of years, and so they've developed that physical defense. But nature isn't a very static environment. Everything has to adapt to changes. Pretty much change is dictated by differences in climate from decade or century to century. And so everything has to adapt to changes. So when trees that were browsed on, when they started developing thorns, or when their leaves started turning sharp because it was an effort to distract, or rather discourage, animals from feeding too much, the animals themselves had to adapt to that. So their mouth parts and their bodies adapted to be able to deal with the thorns. A giraffe has got a very, very thick tongue. She's got a fairly rough palate, and she'll wrap her tongue around the leaves and press it up against her palate and just strip the leaves off of a branch. And the thorns are of no bother to her. She's watching something in the background. She's looked that way a couple of times. Now, since their heads are mostly above the trees and they're able to see a lot further, you'll notice how white they are in the back of the head, the back of the ears, and that is so that white stands out when they are moving about. They can see another giraffe a long way away with its head in the bush feeding. Maggie in Vancouver. Morning, Maggie. Maggie wants to know how old she would be and what is her life expectancy. Well, Maggie, I'm guessing she's probably around in the late teens, maybe 20. It's very difficult to tell without really seeing how much wear there is on her teeth. She's an adult cow. She's well into adulthood. She's got quite a few wrinkles behind her front legs. Just her general size, and I guess things like the shape of her face tell me she's not an old giraffe, she's in her prime. I'll tell you in a minute how way she's standing now. She's not lactating, but she has, I think. Difficult to tell how old she is. Age or lifespan of a giraffe? It's probably around 25 years. Hello, Mrs. G. Beautiful light in her eyes when she looks in the right direction. There's a spur fowl in the background that's calling. I'll drink your beer, I'll drink your beer, I'll drink your beer. But there was another even more important bird that was calling. See, as she walks through the quarry, all the water droplets that are falling off the leaves shows how heavy these trees are with dew and rain. She's probably enjoying it. Why she's brushing against the bushes like that. I'll come and eat some buffalo thorn. Excuse me, I'm just going to talk on the radio. Texting. Morning, I don't think anyone's been to Misi Kaya. I've got one Mafazi Tlamiti on Gallagher shortcut. She's east of the road, just before Ephraim's shortcut, but she's quite deep in the Shatin. There's an old Ndlele that comes in, probably from an old Bamba or something. I'm sitting on that, you can see it on that old Ndlele. Yeah, she's making her way towards Ephraim's shortcut. Yeah, I mean after you go to Misikai, if you check that other shortcut, you might find her. This is Mark, go ahead. Tlamiti on Gallagher shortcut. And so we need to move along. Sorry, repeat that please. Yeah, firm. I hear Texans out as well. Yeah, I did. Has anybody checked if they've gone back over Gowrie Main or if they've gone up to Cheetah Cut Line? Okay, copy. I'll make my way to maybe to Mamba Road or Batalia. Something for us to do this morning, since there's some tracks that have crossed over from the south at Twin Dams, and well, she's heading deeper into the bush. We're going to head south. Only we were heading south. And we're going to have a look. There are some tracks of some cats. It'll be interesting to see if they are still on Duma. Far from Gowrie Dam or Djuma Waterhole, so it's possible that she might be browsing, making her way around to the water later today. There is a lot of moisture on the leaves, they're very wet leaves, so it could be that she's not that dependent on water today. Fortunately, giraffe are not the kind of animal that has attracted the attention of humans in too many ways. They're very, very placid, they're very, very gentle creatures. And they also don't invade crops, so there isn't this animal-human conflict that we have with maybe some of the other animals that are endangered because of either human conflict or because humans have some sick need for some part of that animal, and so they've been hunted for that. So very much from a point of view of giraffe have been mostly left alone and mostly revered by humans. Would hope that secures their future on the planet. As long as there are trees, there's going to be giraffe. From Terry in Florida, wanting to know, what do giraffe do to stay away from predators? How do they deal with, apart from their camouflage? Well, their camouflage doesn't really help them too much, Terry. Excuse me a sec. They're just rather large animals, and they've got fairly large hooves, so they make enough noise that if there were cats around, cats would hear them. The way they defend themselves, of course, is that they are able to kick both with their front and their back legs. They're able to strike forward and sideways with their front legs, and they're able to strike, they're able to kick out with their back legs. Also slightly different to a horse, they can kick almost sideways with their back legs. And many a lion has had has been kicked by a giraffe during a hunt. And perhaps their speed. They given an open area like this, they could probably run faster than the lion, and of course lion can't sustain speed and the sprint for very long, and very often lion will give up on the hunt. But of course they can't always defend themselves, and giraffe eventually will maybe get slower over time, and often old giraffe are killed by lion. Lion are pretty much their only predator, unless some of the other predators have learned how to take baby giraffe. I've known leopard to take young giraffe, hyena have taken young giraffe. So there are different animals that might prey on young giraffe, but it's mostly lion that will feed on adults. And usually it's just because of the pride more than anything else. Being able to, a large number of lions being able to. Morning.
Morning.
Very good, and you?
Good, thank you.
Good, all well?
Yeah, see anything exciting?
Giraffe, beautiful giraffe. See you later. Just greeting staff here from Juma. Kind of courtesy that when we see another vehicle come by, and maybe it doesn't stand today, but usually it's quite dusty, so you stop in and say hello and find out what you've seen and give a chance for the dust to settle. But it's also just a nice friendly gesture of good morning, how are you? There were wildebeest tracks in the road, and I see some wildebeest up ahead. But I was saying giraffe have been hunted by cheetah, small giraffe, because they've learned how to do it, and they perhaps do it collectively or as a coalition. And of course lion hunt giraffe because they hunt collectively. They'll hunt as a pride, and it might not be easy for one lion to do so, but certainly 2 or 3 or more lion make it a lot easier to bring down a giraffe. They only have to get it on the ground, and a lot of times lion have learned how to hunt giraffe, or they will hunt them in the specific conditions when it's slippery or wet or rocky terrain.
Don't see it.
Just here on the apple leaf, and I'm trying to see would it be better to have a sky background.
Maybe this will work.
Skies or leaves. That's nice. Little frame. All puffed up because it's a little damp and because it's probably a little bit cold, and much like the animals raise their hair on their bodies to increase the air between the hairs that help insulate the body better in cooler temperatures, birds do very much the same thing. They puff up the feathers, increases the air pockets between the feathers, and that helps retain warmth better. When we get cold, we get goosebumps. Our hair does the same thing, but I don't know how much warmer it makes us because we don't have much hair or air between our hair. That's for Linda. We're getting some pretty light now because this cloud is easing up in the east, and a bit of blue sky coming through.